All right. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you are in the world. Welcome to Awarding CPD, CME, and Surgical Simulation presented by Inovus Medical. Just to note that members of the SSH Corporate Roundtable host these virtual learning labs each Wednesday at 2:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This virtual learning lab, if we can just make sure we stay muted. Everybody. Second here. Okay. Perfect. All right. Sorry about that. Just to note that this learning lab is being recorded and will be uploaded to the online learning section of the SSH website later this week. And one more note that if you have registered for this learning lab, you agree to receive follow-up communications from members of the Inovus medical team. And with that, I will go ahead and turn the session over to Dr. David Rawaf with Inovus Medical.
Thank you so much, Olivia. Thank you for having us. I must give a really big shout out to IMSH, Olivia and the team for not only supporting us at Inovus, but also allowing us to present in so many different ways, whether it be in person, whether it be on the virtual learning labs. So a huge shout out to them. And I cannot reiterate enough that you must attend the summit in San Diego next year. So we're all looking forward to seeing you there. But without further ado, I will give you an overview today. Hopefully it won't take too much of your time, but hopefully open your eyes a little bit into what connected surgical training looks like and how we can award CPD/CME points accordingly. So my name is David Rawaf. I'm a surgeon by background, but I'm the clinical excellence lead at Inovus Medical. So I've got to firstly acknowledge the fact that Inovus Medical is the company I work for. So and we are an eligible company, which is good. So without further ado, I'll give you some learning objectives. Firstly, I want to give you an example and understanding of what Totem is and where Totem sits within the surgical training pathway. Totem is going to be the platform by which you're able to issue CPD points. We will then look at examples of how to apply and execute Totem within an example of surgical training, and then thinking about how we can go well beyond just surgical simulation. So those of you here that are thinking, oh, I'm not a surgical simulation expert, I'm more into healthcare or health tech simulation, that's perfect. This part will be great for you because you can think about a lot about the non-surgical things that we can use Totem for. And it's I do have the chat open before I continue, and I can see that we've got people from all over the world, which is it's a real honor to speak to you all. We've got Sudan, Spain, Florida, Saudi Arabia. It's really amazing. So welcome everyone. The chat is open here. I can keep an eye on it. So if there's any questions coming in, I'll try and answer it as I go along. I do want this to be as interactive as possible, not just me talking to you. So Totem, what is Totem? Where does it stand? Where does it sit within the surgical training pathway? Let's tackle that first. So I think before we go on to that, it'd be good to tell you a little bit about Inovus Medical. We are a purpose and mission-led company. Our purpose is to improve surgical care through connected surgical training, and our mission is to become the world's leading supplier of surgical training technology. And how are we going to do that? Well, we aim to do that through providing accessible, affordable, and functional surgical training. It's really a triumvirate or a trio that really one cannot function without the other. So what is the current problem? We are all simulationists. We believe in C1, Sim1. And so we do know the problem, but I'll tell you the problem anyway. We know that most medical and surgical training is stuck in the turn of the 19th, maybe 18th century, where we see one and we do one, and then occasionally we teach one, but there is a learning curve. The learning curve is generally quite steep, and that learning curve is on the patient. The other problem that we have is that there is a huge cost barrier. We know, for those of you that have attended previous IMSH summits, that there are technologies available, but they are so expensive. And just because of that cost barrier, it immediately becomes inaccessible because we cannot take one home. It's very difficult to access them because they're locked away in a special hard, potentially a sim lab that's got an hour's schedule between maybe 8 and 4, 8 and 5, something like that. And the sim tech usually has to be there for you to be able to log in, etc. And certainly when we talk about taking the sim home, well, there aren't established networks of distance learning solutions. The other problem we have is that a lot of the incumbent technology is poor in functionality. And I know that I do acknowledge and keep on top of the trends. I know there have been some huge advancements in some of the feedback technologies through motors or through haptic feedback. So through kind of vibration assist motors, or even just kind of motorized 3 axes feedback models that allow you to attach whatever device to them. But at the end of the day, we're relying on physics engines that are then connected to the visual engines. And the communication between the two make things like suturing really difficult. And we all, those of you that have tried this, we all know it's difficult to mimic that. And so what we've gone for, as you'll see, is a slightly different approach. But VR does lack realistic haptic touch feedback. And if we were to go to what pure VR is, which is, imagine your headset and like the Oculus handheld devices, there is no feedback in some of these devices. The other problem is that there's no integration. So there is no disconnect between simulated and live training. So what does that mean? We'll touch on how Totem can provide the solution to that. And obviously I've titled this page The Problems, but to us, we see these as challenges that we want to overcome. So this is our solution, Totem. And I think what I'm going to do at this stage is hopefully this video will play and give you an overview. I think there's a bit of sound. Can you hear that?
David, we can't hear the sound, but when you share the screen, if you click on advanced sharing options, there should be an option to allow you to hear the sound when you go to share the screen.
I haven't got it, but don't worry. We've got it's actually just reading the text below. And there is some really great music in there. So the idea is to really give you an overview as to how difficult surgical training can be. And we're talking here about how practicing each procedure is what leads to, learning and perfecting surgery. Now, I will talk over this a little bit as well. We've got the consultant here watching back the video of the trainee that just performed her operation. And this consultant's now commenting on the video and having a look and testing and benchmarking the same operation that trainee did herself. She's also practicing just to keep up her skills. And we can now see here where we've got all 3 trainees together in the room, the consultant with the 2 trainees in the OR, having performed their training in Totem, ready for a real operation. So that video is available on our website if you want to hear the nice music and the voiceover. I really do recommend listening to the voiceover. It's probably one of the best voiceovers I've heard, and I'm not biased. So Totem, it is a cloud-based ecosystem for surgical and medical simulation. Hopefully this slide will give you an overview of how this works. All of our simulators, including the app that comes with, that works with both Google and Apple phones, connects to Totem, which is a cloud-based service. With that in mind, as you'll see, you're able to upload any simulation, not just from our simulators. You're also able to upload anything that you do on the app. So that can be live surgery. And when we think about how this ecosystem all connects with each other, it's an intertwined back and forth bilateral conversation. So your metrics gets passed to Totem and vice versa. And when we think about, there's just another really image kind of describing the same situation where it's all interconnected and it can be paired a simulation task can be paired with an open surgery task for you to be able to really compare how you did in sim versus reality. And so that gives you the ability to refine your surgical skills. So what I'll do at this stage is I'm going to give you a short video before I dial into what Totem looks like on the website. And we can see here, hopefully this is that working? Yeah, it's playing. No, it's not playing now. Okay, so what we can see here is the appendix, which is a physical model that replicates the physical, visual, and mechanical properties of a real appendix. And we're operating on this with real instruments in one of our simulators. So this is what the Totem app looks like once we're doing an actual operation. You can see we've got a little bit of augmented reality cecum and small bowel. We've got some augmented reality bleeding going on there, so a little bit of a complication we have to think about. So it's a cognitive step. We haven't given a surgical diathermy stack to take home for this trainee where they're practicing this operation. So it's just cognitively testing them. Are they able to deal with this complication after, as you can see there, maybe getting a little bit too close to the appendix? And as they dissect the mesoappendix, you'll see that they're using cold cut technique, but they're practicing their ability to transfer a 3D environment into a 2D image and then back to a 3D environment in their head again, and then being able to practice that fulcrum, which is a challenge for all laparoscopic surgeons. So I think at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just share with you my screen here, which is going to be of Totem. So if you just bear with me 1 second, I should open that up for you. Hopefully you can see that. And I'm going to go wider so you can see everything. Fantastic. So I'm just going to give you a demo of what Totem looks like and the ways in which we are able to utilize this for training and how, most crucially, we can get CPD points. So here is my, I guess, profile. So this is what it would look like as I first log in. And the great thing about this is that I'm able to see pretty much all the procedures I've done. We can actually look at the appendix that we did earlier, that we just watched now. And what's great about looking into this appendix and dialing in a bit deeper is that I haven't just watched the video, but I can also fast forward the video and I can see what kind of comments I've invited my colleagues to provide, what they've said. And we're actually, as you can see now, we're using an endo loop from, I think it's J&J. So we can use any device in the simulator and still track it. And this is the beauty of this now, is that I'm able to look at some of our metrics that we've gained from doing this operation. Things like the smoothness score, the handedness, time in view, completion time, precision, and acceleration. And we can see the progression as we go along. So actually I can go back to this operation up here and see what the metrics were for that operation, which is really fantastic. So those are for the augmented reality modules, but we have a lot of modules that obviously don't use huge amounts of augmented reality, but we can still upload the video. So here's a simulated polypectomy that we did with this was a wet lab, so it had an irrigation, it had some kind of morcellation and shaving, and we still keep the completion time as a metric, despite it not being an augmented reality module. The great thing about that is that we can start to see improvement in our completion time, no matter what it is that we're doing. So these are surgical settings, and what's great about this, here's another example, which is the cholecystectomy. I might as well just quickly show you this. The great thing is that here we're watching essentially a kind of closed triangle dissection, trying to put on some staples, etc. And we're seeing, again, the same kind of metrics being applied. Now, I promised you that I was going to talk to you about the surgical setting. What we have here is the ability not only to keep an eye on our simulated operations, but also we can upload, with patient permission, our live operations and ask patients, ask our colleagues and our faculty members to provide feedback for this. As you can see there, Sarah Smith, our consultant, well, we got some bit of random text there, but this is the demo account. But the idea here is that we can see that there are users that are giving us feedback. We can actually select those users So I can say I want Sarah to kind of give us some feedback on this video, and so we can invite Sarah. The invitation request has been sent. And if we go back again, we have a live cholecystectomy here. So similar kind of thing. This is great now to be acting as your portfolio as a surgeon. You can keep track of how you're doing. You're able to show faculty members as you progress through your training that you are competent, not only quantitatively and objectively through the skill metrics, but also qualitatively and subjectively through actually watching the video. And this is where it gets really interesting. We can actually, obviously, as a faculty member, I can give you an overview of how the groups function. So I can manage certain trainees in certain trusts or residency programs. And I can manage my own connections as a trainee. I can see what my colleagues are doing. So gamifying what we're doing, it really makes it interesting for trainees where they can compare and see who's doing better. And so a little bit of competition is healthy, isn't it? But this is where it gets really interesting. I promised I'd get here, which is the assessments area. As a faculty member now, I am able to create, so imagine a survey monkey, but designed for medics. I'm able to create a form which can be tailored to however I like. I can create, Likert scales or stars and with text boxes, etc. Once I've created that form, I can actually set an assessment for my trainees in the form of, let's just stick to lap for now. I want them to do 10 appendicectomies. I want them done by tomorrow. And I will give them 1 day leeway to think about that. And I can select either individual users or I can go for the entire team. Okay. And what's great about this here is that now we have the option to tell them we want it recorded. We don't want it to be done in the sim lab, so it can be done at home, but we do want this automated. What does this mean? It means that their first go is going to be selected. So if this was an examination purpose or examination case use, we would expect them to not be able to do any of these without it automatically coming to me as a faculty member. So even if they mess up their first go, I will see it. And this is where the crucial part happens, where I can attach that form that I created earlier as part of this. And I can then choose who fills out this form. I can ask either the trainee themselves to fill it out, Jordan, or I can ask someone else to fill out that form. It could be their colleagues, so part of the 360 assessment, or it could be a specific faculty member that specializes in that particular operation. And I don't just have to stop there. I can actually then, and as you'll see later, add in a abdominal exam as part of this. As the reason being is that it's kind of goes hand in hand with general surgery and the appendectomy. So hopefully that gives you an overview of how we can apply Totem within surgery. And most importantly, if we were to then circle back and see, well, look, now my colleague or my trainee has done these 10 appendicectomies. This trainee can now go into their activity and they're able to, actually, if I dial into specifically all of general surgery, and I don't put any dates on there, so this is everything that they've ever done in general surgery. They've only done 10 minutes, but this is a demo account. What we're able to do at this point is if we go down here, we can see the CPD point section. So this is grouped to ungrouped, depending on what it is that they've done. And just as an FYI, there'll be another section here for CME, and I'm going to come on to that in a sec. We can create a new CPD certificate accordingly. And that CPD certificate will be down here for us to view now. And we're able to then load that up. As you can see here, we've got a CPD certificate issued by myself as the CPD issuer, accredited by the Royal College of Surgeons. And we can see down here exactly how these points have been structured. So traditionally, it's 1 point per 1 hour, as we all know, but there is a static amount of reading time either side of the operation. 1 for reading the learning objectives in advance, and 2 for reading their metrics afterwards. Now, as we convert this over to CME, we're going to have a section here for CME that will allow us to convert those CME points that are eligible for CME points. And the crucial difference between CPD and CME is that CME has to have evidence of learning objectives met and evidence of an assessment. So when we go back to where we've asked our trainee to perform 10 general surgery appendectomies, when we tie that with an assessment, we know that's been done because they've read the learning objectives through completing the task. They've completed the task itself, so the time that they've spent doing those tasks, plus the assessment attached to that. So you'll be able to see the assessment as well as the learning objectives created as part of that CME, which is really exciting. I believe it's one of the first platforms that provides this with such flexibility. And as you're going to see very shortly, as I go back to my presentation, second. As you're going to see, we're going to give you an overview or understanding how Totem can function beyond just surgical simulation. I kind of gave it away a little bit earlier with the abdominal exam, in that if we were to now, if we were to now go back to Totem, and where is it? It's here. And you can hopefully see my screen. Yep. We can actually now go into stuff that is open surgery. We can go into stuff that is open examination. So we've got a couple of like open things up here: sebaceous cyst removal, incision and drainage of abscess, etc. But if I was to go into the assessments tab again and create a new assessment, yes, we're able to do basic surgical skills, but we're also able to do some practical stuff. NG tube insertion, wound care, tracheostomy care. This list, in theory, is endless. The same goes for the examination. What we're able to do now in theory, with the ability to automate the recordings, to request recordings, provide an end cutoff date, and to provide a template for assessors to actually complete based on their performance, we're able to, in theory, create a method of remote examination that also provides the trainee CPD and CME points as such. So now we're looking at a future where we can, in theory, in the course of one learning cycle, not only test the trainee on their ability to understand the reasons why they're doing the operation, so i.e. examining the patient, understanding eliciting the clinical signs, understanding the etiology and the medical and surgical requirement to do the operation, but they're also able to do the operation in a simulated environment safely, be able to record all of that, and then be able to provide that as evidence to a faculty member to show that they've done this. So we're really excited about trialing some of these with various institutions in the UK and the US, where we're going to now take the live, previously live faculty-led invigilation away from it being in a course, in a room where everyone has to travel to, where it's difficult to scale, most importantly. We're now going to take that onto a cloud where people can now do this at home with the faculty member being comfortable, knowing that we know that they're not cheating or they're not circumventing a way around it. And one example, you may be thinking, oh, that could be anyone that's operating in the laparoscopic environment. What's great about the Totem mobile app is that not only will I be able to say that we would love to have you do a cholecystectomy, but I'd also want the Totem mobile recording output facing you as you do that operation. So I know that it's you doing that operation, but also not only is it an invigilation thing, a probity thing, but also it's fantastic for really seeing how the trainee is doing the operation. Are they holding the instruments well? Do they have the right non-technical skills when it comes to their situational awareness? Do they have the ability to look up at the screen and not constantly down at their instruments as some trainees do, which is natural as part of the learning curve? But again, the whole point is taking that learning curve away from the patient's bedside and putting it in an environment where these trainees can safely practice, get good, positive, constructive feedback, and also to be able to do this really in a way that's scalable, not only to just one simulation lab or one course at any one time. And where this comes into real power is when we think about the learning curve itself. We dial a bit deeper into that. We tend to learn something and we retain that knowledge for some period of time. very quickly it starts to drop off. It plateaus and then it starts to drop off. And we need to then refresh those skills. And, you know, ATLS is a fantastic example. We need to keep that knowledge up. I think it's every few years. ALS is another example, every few years. BLS is every year. We're required to do these things because otherwise, you know, we cannot prove that we haven't lost that knowledge. We can't just learn it once and forget about it. So now we are moving away from just going to one learning environment face to face, and we're now going offline where we can repeat it again and again and again. And what's fantastic about this is that trainees that have already started using this platform are literally saying this. They're able to keep up their skills without falling behind, whether they're off sick, whether they're on paternity, maternity leave, whether they are abroad for fellowships, or whether they're even on holiday, even taking some time off, thinking, well, I'm going to go back to operations. Let me just check that I can do this kind of work. We've had consultants as well. Absolutely love this approach because they're able to warm up before long days of surgery. They're able to even check that they're fit to operate. So we've actually picked up burnout before. As much as physicians and surgeons are scared of this, you know, there will come a time where our performance will be measured in ways that we can't even imagine. And, you know, this could be one of them where, who knows, our insurance premiums could be lowered if we can prove our metrics are great. But these are more wider conversations that I think are more philosophical than practical. But what I will do now, I'll go back to my PowerPoint. And I'll give you a quick summary here, but I think I'd love to give an opportunity for all of you here watching to think of any questions. If you have any, pop them in the chat or raise your hand whilst I go over the summary. So I hope today I've shown you how Totem sits within both surgical and medical training pathways. There's a huge level of user engagement and buy-in for distance learning, and we're able to monitor and progress and examine remotely. And what's really powerful from all of this is that we're able to provide CPD and soon CME points. Hopefully this is an example, a gold standard of how it should be done, and would welcome any questions from anyone. I can't see any questions. Oh, we have one hand up. Is that Murad? Would you like to unmute yourself? You're welcome to talk.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello, amazing talk, by the way. Really enjoyed all the setup and everything. Just a quick question. Would you be able to upload like instructors, our instructors videos on this on the web page?
Do you mean like the correct way to do something?
No, I mean each instructor has his own way. Let's say different languages in Arabic, for example. I would like to upload like an instructor, so it would be available in the library inside the as additional content.
Do you mean, hang on, let me, if I go back to share my screen over here, do you mean this section here?
So I cannot see it. Let me zoom into it, please. Yes.
Or did you mean the section over here where we've got different templates and things like that?
What I meant is, let's say a surgeon can upload a certain structural video of his actual surgery or actual use of Totem. So
yes. Yeah, absolutely. The answer to that is yes. So to give you an example of this, so this cholecystectomy that we had here, in theory, was uploaded by the consultant, and the consultant can then share that video with an entire group of trainees if he wanted to. And this does have sound. So this is important. If he was to annotate this, or he was to provide a a voiceover in whatever language, it can be in Arabic, then he's able to do that, and you're able to watch it back. He's also able to add in extra comments. So if he wanted to, he can add in a transcript of any other language that he wanted.
Amazing.
I hope that answers your
Thank
question.
you. Yes, it does. One more question, if I may. Is there a possibility to create online courses using this platform, like paid?
So paid online courses, what we do have the ability to is we are an API based company. So we do have an ability to plug in an API into this. So for example, we can assess that you've read a particular or gone through a particular process. We're at the very early stages of finalizing that, but how that will look will be really interesting. It's going to be an education tab on the left. There will be a section for this. So that's a really great question you asked that, because that's actually the next thing that we're trying to achieve. You know, Inovus Medical is, we're not an education company, but we want to facilitate education. So the way to do that is to allow each individual residency program, training program, hospital to provide their own preferred content. It could be from a major educational provider, or it could be their own content that they created just for their institution. But either way, we want to be able to accommodate for that content. So that's really important for us. And that's something that we are finalizing at the moment.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you so much, Murad. I notice another question here from Melody, idea of cost. So the idea is that actually with these, with our simulators that we have institutional and take-home simulators. The institutional simulators that range between 20 and 40,000 US dollars. These simulators are designed to sit in a simulation lab, and with their yearly annual subscription, not only does it come with your ability to have a year's supply of consumables that you can order. You can actually order this through Totem. So I didn't show you that. There's a whole section that you can order consumables, and you can edit this yourself if there are consumables that you use for your own particular training. Not only do you get a year's supply of consumables, but you also gain unlimited access to Totem. So what does that mean? I can create licenses for as many people as I want. So you can see here, we have certain places that have unlimited licenses. I'm able to create new licenses as well from that section. Over here, for example, I can create a new user just by putting in their name, email address, and their role. And then that will just turn into a new user. However, if you were alone, if you wanted to purchase Totem just by itself, it's a few $100s a year. The exact figure I can get for you if you're more than welcome to give us a shout by email or have a visit on our website. Got to clarify here, I'm the surgeon within the company, the academic, and I've been told specifically not to focus on cost here. But the idea is that it's very, very cheap. We try and make it accessible by making it free for anyone that has an institutional simulator. So that means that you are easily able to scale this piece of software, not just for one cohort, but for multiple cohorts after the other, which really allows you, as you know, as a residency program or a medical school or even a nursing school, you're able to scale this up across multiple years. Murad, I see you've got a question here about use of animal tissue in the simulator. Great question. You can if you wanted to, but we actually moved away from that for multiple reasons. One is some of the laws, some countries were not able to use certain tissues. Also, animal tissue is very expensive, not only to acquire, actually it's fairly cheap to acquire. It's just difficult to store, transport, and dispose of. Trainees that I know that work on, so in London, in the Royal College of Surgeons, we have the basic surgical skills course, which I'm a faculty of. We use a lot of pig meat, pig skin. We have some people complain that obviously it's not halal processed, but obviously the smell of that is quite difficult sometimes. It's not that realistic. Some of the tendons are great, but the skin is usually separated from the muscle layers. Some of the fat layers are sometimes non-existent. It's not the most realistic solution that we have. So so we actually went and created, I'm not sure if we can see them on here, we created suturing pads, suturing skins that simulate the ability to here we can see it here. So we've simulated a suturing skin that has a cuticular, subcuticular layer that's reinforced. You can see the 2 layers there. There's also a fat layer that you can practice fat tacking. This stuff is really strong. You could do, Aberdeen knots without it tearing through, for example. It's really quite impressive. You can see him put quite a lot of pressure through there, and it doesn't cut through. It's very reusable. It doesn't smell, it doesn't expire. The other one that's quite fascinating to watch as well is the sebaceous cyst that we have here. We've got a cyst and an abscess, and all of this in theory is inert substance that you could eat if you wanted to. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it, but the idea is that this stuff does not go off, and it's much safer to practice on. But saying that, you can, if you wanted to, if there's a particular course where you're using mutton, using animal tissues, where this is how you've done it for the last 5-10 years, and you validated this method of training, you're able to record that, and you're able to place that on the app, and you can see if it's recorded at the same time, how your completion time's improved, and then also compare with others how they do. You can do this remotely. It's really fantastic. Thank you, Melody, for your kind words. And Kathy, I see here, I've got a question. So if I understand, one benefit of this shifts the synchronous feedback to asynchronous feedback. Very interesting, but still requires the same amount of time of the instructor to review. Very true. Other benefit of not using faculty time, tracking economy, motion, smoothness, handliness, time of procedure. Correct. Now, faculty time is like the forefront of my mind. And that's why we have the ability to do, well, actually, I think I'm using the wrong mouse. There we go. If we fast forward here, we can speed this up. The other thing that we're able to do is we ask trainees to essentially comment on their own video. So when they do that, there will be a timestamp, and I can just jump to those timestamps. So, if we said to the trainee, listen, we want you to put comments on the parts that you had trouble with, we can skip to those parts very, very easily. And the great thing about this app is, or this web app, is that as I shrink it down, you can see here it turns into essentially an app on your phone. So I could be doing this on the train. I could be reviewing content wherever, really, even perhaps in between cases whilst grabbing a bite to eat. So, that's really, the idea here is that we are very cognizant of faculty time, and yes, being able to not just look at the video quickly and timestamps, but looking at the metrics helps you to do that. And yes, Murad, I remember the custard-filled small water balloons. They, that's what we do with basic surgical skills as well. They place it underneath the skin of the pig tissue. So we do, I don't know if you can see under this gentleman's right middle knuckle, there's a nevus there that's simulated. This is to replace what we used to use, the pig's nipple, to simulate nevus extraction with an elliptical incision, and you suture it up. Now we have a simulated nevus, which actually does kind of look like a BCC. And what's great about this is, silicone or these kind of modules, usually if you inject into them, it sprays fluid back out at you because it's a synthetic element. It expands and then just immediately pushes the fluid back out. So as part of the simulation, we should be practicing local anesthetic injection. This nevus allows you to do that because it has varying ability to absorb fluid, which is really fantastic. So not only is this great for injecting at local anesthetic, but it can be used to simulate and practice aesthetic procedures as well, which is fantastic. And yes, hand lotion as well, Sherry. That's a good idea. So I guess if it pops, then you can keep your skin nice and fresh. So hopefully I've answered a couple of questions. Are there any more before we wrap it up, Olivia?
I don't think that I see any more questions in the chat, and none have come to me.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Olivia, for having me today. I really appreciate you providing us the the opportunity to present, and also, bringing everyone together from all around the world. It's really fantastic. So thank you everyone for dialing in and not bailing on me.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Inovus Medical. All right, have a good rest of your day, everybody.
Take care.